Hey everyone, Greg from CarID.com, and in this video, we're going Jeeping. Well, that was a lot of fun. There really is nothing better than tearing through the trails no matter what you're driving. But out of all the vehicles that you could be driving off-road, there's just something different about a Jeep. And this right here is our 2017 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. Now I know, most of you watching are probably thinking to yourselves, a JK Wrangler, but what about the new JL? Well, as great as the new JL Wrangler is, Chrysler Corporation did manufacture the JK from 07 to the 18, and there are tons of these Jeeps still out on the road, too many of them still sitting on stock suspension and tires. But the point being is that the JK is still very relevant in the off-road community, so it was about time that we went ahead and built our own. So this is our 2017 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited Rubicon, and in its stock form, I gotta say, this thing is pretty damn capable off-road. Now because it's a Rubicon, it's more than just a few steps up from the basic sport model when it compares to what's underneath. This thing has upgraded Dana 44 axles front and rear with electronic lockers and 410 gears. Jeep also equips the Rubicon right from the factory with a 4-to-1 low-range transfer case, electronic front sway bar disconnects for better articulation, and even factory rock rails. Now all of this is great and really a bargain when you think about all the great off-road gear that you get for the price. But this is CarID, so we can't leave this thing stock. So the first thing that we have to cross off our list is getting this thing up in the air, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. So here is just a taste of what's to come. Now, like I said, getting our JK lifted is our top priority, so we're going to start by installing Teraflex's 4-inch short arm lift kit with 8 flex arms, springs, track bar, and optional 1-inch spring spacers, and of course, all the necessary brackets and hardware. Now, I decided to go with the 4-inch kit because really, these JKs don't need to be lifted to the sky to perform better off-road, and I also want our JK to still be easy to drive on the street as a daily driver. So to accomplish both of those goals, Teraflex's 4-inch kit was the perfect choice. It's also going to give us just enough room to stuff some 37-inch tires underneath. Now when it comes to the shocks, we chose to upgrade from the standard 9550 shocks that come with the kit and are bolting up a set of Fox 2.0 Performance Series shocks with external reservoirs tuned for this specific kit. And we also have a lot of other odds and ends to bolt up in the process, but let's get to work and I'm going to show you what else I have planned as we go. Alright guys, so we're going to first start in the back end of our Jeep and start with the rear suspension. Now the reason I wanted to do this is because the rear is a little bit easier than the front and I figured we can go ahead and knock it out quick. Now what we need to do is essentially lower the entire rear differential and axle assembly so we can get out our stock springs and then start installing our new springs as well as of course our flex arms. Now to do that, we're going to need to disconnect all of our hydraulic brake line brackets, e-brake cable bracket, remove our track bar, sway bar links, and then remove our shocks so we can lower the entire rear axle and get our springs out. The first thing we need to do is get these small wheels and tires out of our way. Remove all wiring harnesses attached to the rear axle, which includes the ABS harnesses and the electronic locker harness. Unbolt the hydraulic brake line brackets from the frame and the e-brake cable bracket under the Jeep. Remove the sway bar links on both sides. And then the track bar bolt connecting it to the frame and disconnect the differential vent hose. With post jacks or a floor jack, support the weight of the rear axle. With the rear axle supported, loosen the lower shock bolt at the axle and then remove both the driver and passenger side shocks. Then lower the rear axle and remove the stock coil springs. Well, alright guys, that didn't take us too long. We now have all of our stock components out, including our coil springs and shocks, and now our rear axle is solely supported on the post jacks. Now it's time to get some of our Teraflex parts installed, starting with our new lower flex arms. Now remember, because the entire weight of the rear axle is only supported on the post jacks, replace one at a time on each side. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with the driver's side lower, then move on to the driver's side upper, and then vice versa on the other side. Let's get started. Remove both the axle bolt and frame bolt connecting the control arm. Thread in the grease fitting to the new upper arm and install it into the Jeep with the flex arm joint on the frame side. Remove the lower arm on the same side, unbolting it from the frame and then the axle. Install the new lower arm with the rubber bushing on the frame side and the flex joint on the axle. And just repeat the exact same process on the opposite side of the Jeep. Alright guys, so we have all of our new flex arms installed in the rear of our Jeep. Now it's time to get our new lift coils installed. Now, Teraflex does give you the option to either keep or throw away your factory spring isolators. It's a good idea to keep them if you do plan to install an off-road rear bumper or maybe an oversized spare tire, just because of the fact they give you that little bit of height that you need to support that extra weight. Now we're also going to be installing a set of coil spring spacers. Now Teraflex does give you 1/2-inch spacers that totals for the 4 inches of lift. However, we upgraded to their 1-inch thick spacers at all 4 corners. This is going to give us just enough lift that we want on our Jeep. After those are installed, we're going to go ahead and bolt up a set of our new Fox shocks, get the weight of the rear axle supported on those, get these post jacks out of the way, and then finish up the rear installation. Coat the spring spacers with a little bit of grease to make them easier to pop in. Now you can lower the axle as low as possible and install your new coil springs. You can now grab your new set of shocks and bolt them in to help support the weight of the axle. Remove your stock bump stops, then apply a little bit of grease to the new bump stop extensions and press them in. Guys, don't forget when you're installing this rear bump stop block, just make sure the shelf of it is actually facing towards the front of the Jeep. That's the orientation that it needs to be in before you go ahead and bolt it down. All right guys, just wanted to pause for a second and talk about these coil spring retainers. Now this is a very important step within doing this installation. Now when you're doing it, it can be kind of a pain in the neck, but they do provide you with this tool to actually hold the nut underneath this spring pad on the opposite side. You can get in there just enough to hold the nut in place, put your plate down, and then the bolt through the plate, and then bolt it into place. All right guys, so at this point, we're pretty much all finished up with the rear end lift on our JK right here. Now we got our new flex arms in, our new coil springs in, our Fox shocks are in. We just have a couple odds and ends that we need to attend to. Now we're first gonna bolt up our brand new extended sway bar links, then get our new track bar bracket bolted up into place. And after that, it's just reconnecting a couple wiring harnesses that we originally disconnected and our vent hose. Now the one thing I'm not gonna do now, and you can make your decision when you do your lift, if you do it now or later, is install the extended brake lines. I'm gonna go ahead and wait till we have everything done and then do all the brake lines at once and then bleed the entire system. Install the new extended sway bar links into the sway bar, then the axle, and bolt them into place. Remove the track bar from the axle and only install the bolt on the frame side. With the track bar hanging, remove the driver's side lower flex arm bolt and install the new track bar relocation bracket over the axle and then bolt it in. All right guys, so as you can see, we went ahead and installed our new rear track bar bracket, but if you take a closer look right here, it doesn't quite line up to that top hole that we need it to. So a good trick, get yourself a ratchet strap or a come along, hook one end onto the frame itself, the other end onto the axle, just to shift it forward enough to get that bolt in. Now reconnect your vent hose and all of the wiring that was previously disconnected. All right guys, now that we have the whole rear end of our Jeep finished up, it's time to move on to the front. Now it's going to be very similar to the rear end disassembly that we just did. We need to get out everything that's supporting the weight of the front axle. So that's going to include our sway bar links, our shocks, our front track bar, get that all out of the way, lower the front axle down so we can get our springs out, and then we can start throwing these new Teraflex parts at it. Just like the rear, support the weight of the axle and remove the stock shocks and sway bar links. Remove the track bar bolt connecting it to the frame in both hydraulic brake line brackets. To make it easier to lower the axle, loosen all of the control arm bolts. With the axle lowered, remove your stock coil springs and bump stops. All right guys, so just like the rear of our Jeep, we now have our front end completely torn down, and it's now time to start bolting up some new parts. We're gonna first start by putting in our Teraflex upper spring spacer with the factory isolator, and then move on to our new bump stop extensions. After that, it's gonna be all about getting these flex arms out and the new Teraflex flex arms in. Now there's one thing that I wanna make very clear about these flex arms. Teraflex designs them specifically for an exact location and orientation on your Jeep, and each one of them are labeled with a sticker decal on top. Just make sure to follow this exact instruction of where they go and in what position they go on your Jeep to make sure your install is completely smooth. Apply some grease to the bump stop extensions, and using a block of wood or rubber mallet, press them into the factory mounts. Unbolt the factory lower control arms from the frame and then the axle. And just like the rear, install your grease fittings and adjust the new flex arms to the appropriate length. Then remove the upper arms in the same procedure and install your new upper flex arms. All right guys, so this front end part of our lift is actually going very smooth. Now at this point, we're ready to go ahead and throw in our new lift coils. But before we can do that, we need to go ahead and bolt up our brand new bump stop spacers onto our factory spring pads. Now to do that, it will require a little bit of drilling. What you're going to want to do is locate the center of the factory spring pad and drill a 5/16 inch hole. Once that's done, take your self-tapping bolts that are supplied with the kit to bolt these into place, and then and only then can you throw in your new lift coils. But once those are in, we can then bolt up our shocks, and we are one step closer to finishing the front end of this build. Use a center punch to mark your hole. Then, starting with a smaller bit, drill out your factory spring pad to a 5/16 inch hole and bolt the new bump stop spacers into place. If you can't get your front axle low enough to install your springs, using a spring compressor can make the job a lot easier. Install your new extended length shocks, first bolting it to the body and then the axle. Take your extended length sway bar links and bolt them first into the sway bar and then the axle. All right guys, so at this point, the majority of our lift is installed on our JK, but we just have a few odds and ends that we need to attend to before we can go ahead and get our JK out on the trails. Now, due to the massive increase in lift height, the first thing that we need to do is install our extended brake lines. And because the brake system will be open, that's also going to include bleeding out the entire brake system once we're done. But there is one component that should never be overlooked, especially when you're lifting a JK this high, and that's your front drive shaft. Plain and simple, the front driveline simply can't handle intense off-road abuse. And because of our new increased lift height, it also creates an incredibly drastic angle, and that's actually dangerously close to our front exhaust system as well. So to make sure that we don't run into any issues, we reached out to our friends at Adams Driveshaft, and we decided to go with their 1310 heavy-duty front driveshaft with sealed U-joints that's specifically designed to handle up to a 37-inch tall tire and a 6-inch lift. Now, compared to the stock driveshaft, the overall diameter of the tubing is also smaller, only 2 inches to be exact, which is definitely going to help us with our exhaust system clearance. But to be 100% confident that we won't have any issues with exhaust contact out in the woods, we're also going to install Teraflex's exhaust spacer kit. Now, this kit uses 2 exhaust inserts that will move the Y pipe just enough to give us plenty of clearance from our front driveshaft under full articulation. Unbolt the stock driveshaft from the transfer case and the front axle, and using a rubber mallet, remove the stock yoke from the transfer case. Swap the factory O-ring over to the new yoke and install it on the transfer case splines. Coat the factory nut with black RTV to prevent any leaks, and then torque down the new yoke. With the new yoke installed, bolt up your new driveshaft to the transfer case and then the front differential. Spray all your exhaust bolts with penetrating oil and loosen the band clamp connecting the Y pipe to the mid pipe and chisel off the factory rivet. Now loosen both exhaust flanges connecting the Y pipe to the mid pipe and install your exhaust spacers. Loosen the factory steel line from the brake hose and unbolt the brake hose from the caliper. This job can get pretty messy, so make sure you have a drain pan on hand. Tighten the new hose to the caliper and the stock steel line and use the supplied bracket to bolt it to the frame. Then it's time to bleed the brakes. All right, guys, bolt by bolt, we are getting closer and closer to finally finishing this project and getting to thrash this thing out in the woods, but we're not there just yet. Now, we're at the point we need to get our Jeep back on the ground and finish up some suspension tweaks, like bolting up our new Fox steering stabilizer, our adjustable track bar, and then torquing down all of our control arms. But to do that, we need a set of wheels and tires. Now, we have a set of wheels and tires, but let's just say they're a little wider than normal, so they will not clear with these stock bumpers. So to get a little bit more clearance, we reached out to Westin, and we're gonna bolt up their Westin Snyper stubby front bumper. Let's get started. Remove all of the plastic trim under the front bumper, then unbolt the 4 bolts holding the bumper to the frame. Drop in the winch of your choice into place and bolt up the new fairlead and D-rings. Then just remove the factory grille and run the wiring to the battery. For the rear bumper, remove your spare tire and carrier from the Jeep, and then all of the bolts and brackets holding the bumper to the frame. Grab a buddy to help and lift up the new bumper and bolt it directly to the frame. With the Jeep back on the ground, bolt up the new track bar on the frame side and have a friend turn the wheel to line up the axle side bolt. Adjust your new track bar to have a total length of 33 inches and make the final adjustments on the alignment rack. Next, unbolt your factory steering stabilizer and bolt up the new stabilizer of your choice. With the weight of the Jeep on the suspension, tighten all of your new flex arms. All right, guys, so we got our new Westin bumpers bolted up to our Jeep, and we got it back on the ground, which means we have our new wheels and tires bolted up, and let me show you what we got. These right here are Dropstar's 652 BM wheels in a satin black finish with milled aluminum accents along each spoke. They're a massive 22 by 14 with a -76 offset, and we wrapped them in 37-inch Nitto Trail Grappler mud terrain tires. Now that we got our Jeep back on the ground, all the final tweaks are done. Let's go take this thing out for a ride. Alright guys, well that about wraps up our Project JK Wrangler build, and if you like how our Wrangler turned out and want to do the same to yours, head over to carid.com to check out all the cool parts and accessories that we installed. Now as for me, I'm going to go ahead and do some wheeling.